Yeah?
Yes.
So my sister keeps telling me to put down this camera, but my creative practice when I moved up to New England from St. Louis, I loved taking pictures before I went, but I wasn't taking many and I did not have a good camera. And the first time I had a camera just like this. This is the second one of this kind of Canon. First time I got one, I had to practice to carry it with me everywhere so that I would take pictures, and I felt so self-conscious and so embarrassed about just carrying a camera, which is silly. Why would I be self-conscious or embarrassed? And now I carry this camera with me everywhere. The poor thing is so dusty. And I'm not kind to my lenses, and I really should be. But I take a million pictures, and I just love it. I love, I just took a bunch of pictures of that leaf over there that's just so gorgeous, the contrast, the way the veins come down. So I guess it helps me pause and notice the beauty around me all the time, and that's a lot of my creative practice currently.
Thank you. We're talking with the poet, writer, and photographer, visual artist, arts administrator, and more, Deborah Mashibini Pryor.
Thank you.
When I met her, the name was not hyphenated, and now it is.
Yes.
And it's been a wonderful journey to be your friend and for you to be my mentor of sorts, to be my sounding board many a times. And I want to talk to you today about your many lives, and this life being St. Louis, and your creative life before St. Louis, and maybe even leading up to your involvement of YeyoArts. What do you want to tell me?
Oh my.
So
when
much.
I think of creative life before St. Louis, I'm thinking it wasn't happening. Because I think before St. Louis was before the first time I came, when Joy and I met, and we became the Blue Mashibini Poetry Team.
Can I record you?
Yeah,
Can I show your face? Yes.
So that is my buddy Joy. And
Yes.
we were in our
Mashibini. Oh,
Blue
still are.
Mashibini. Yes. And the story was, the way we met, of course I know how we met. It was Michael. And so this one guy who lived in my apartment building was seeing me.
Yeah, and he was friends with my sister's old friend from high school.
But anyway, he started trying to talk to Joy and talk to me at the same time, and I went up one day and knocked on his door, and she was there. He opened the door, and he didn't know what to say. He just started stuttering, and then he said he had to go to the store.
And while he was gone to the store, we started talking, and she showed me around the apartment, and she had little snippets of poems
in
placed
my
it on the
apartment.
wall
Yeah.
and on the door, and I liked it, and I told her that I wrote poetry too.
Well, she said she wasn't a poet, but that she
I
wrote things down.
Yeah.
And that things she wrote down were in shoe boxes. So when we went to her place, she started pulling all these shoe boxes out of the closet, and she had stacks and stacks of poetry.
Yeah.
And what was really
Amazing.
was that I had a poem called Friday Blues about not getting my check, and now how am I going to make it through the weekend until, Monday. She had a poem called Getting Through Monday, and it was the exact same thing. And
Yes.
so we were telling the same story. So in St. Louis, I think I discovered I wasn't alone, and that I wasn't alone, two separate words, a lone person, and that my experience was one that we shared.
Right.
And then together we started reading poetry. Shirley LaFleur had an open mic at the Creative Arts and Expression Lab on Grand, and we saw an ad for it in the St. Louis Argus.
Yeah.
And then we dared each other to go, one of
I
those.
will if you will.
Yes.
Okay, I will if you will.
And then we went down and we read, and it was 1982. And in St. Louis in 1982, you did not see a black woman and a white woman on stage together.
You did not.
Unless they were, some strip club somewhere.
Which we were not.
And then the poetry we were writing and sharing was about the no good men who did us wrong, and being broke and waiting for the check to come
Just
in the mail.
struggling through life and trying to do better and having some hope at the end. Trying to really get past it, but holding it down and get through the struggle. That was it.
So that was my first creative era in St. Louis. And then Zimbabwe and I met, and he was a musician performing with Shirley. And we hooked up, we went off to New York and then New Mexico, and life happened, different things. And second round, and was living in Alton, Illinois, with Zimbabwe and his family. And there were some other side stories that inform like the kind of whole narrative of my life experience, but the one about creativity has to do with coming back to St. Louis from Alton after Zimbabwe had a massive stroke, and I was in a position where I had just invested in my creative work as a poet by going to SIUE that Eugene Redmond talked me into, and kept writing references for me and sending little notes like hinting to me that I should go to SIU. So I applied after the deadline for admission and for a teaching assistantship, but with his recommendation for both, I got both. And I was really diving into the poetry then and learning more. My work became informed by studying contemporary poets. Lucille Clifton, you know, I would say to this day, she's like my very favorite poet. Because she writes about just real life, down to earth stuff. And then I was going through a hard time after Zimbabwe's stroke. Caregiving, everything about my creative work felt like it went out the window. Joy was still around, but your mother had those brain tumors.
Yeah, aneurysm.
The aneurysms. And so you were engaged in family and health and caregiving, and I was caregiving and trying to survive.
Isn't that ironic how that worked out?
Yes. And then I was really getting pretty depressed.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to remember how I discovered Yayo. And
I forget how we met.
I can't remember. It might have been a cat
up
thing.
that way for something, or someone mentioned it.
All I remember is that when I first walked through the door, there was the light and the windows and Wangoi, and I just felt welcome. I felt embraced
It had a
and
very warm
challenged.
heart. It's like the open oven in the kitchen with the heat just warming up the whole place.
Yeah, that's how
And
it felt.
I was really excited that this is by women. A group of women artists got together and said, we're going to have our own place.
Yeah.
We're going to do this, and we're going to bring in other artists. They're going to have a place to present.
And the kids
And
were
that
always around. There
Children
was
were welcome.
the library, with all the books on the shelves. There was just the Wangoi bringing in food all the time.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
every event,
Art,
Wangoi was bringing in
Jewelry.
something. Yeah.
Yes. It was there. It was all beautiful and there. And warm-spirited people just openly embrace you.
And I felt like there, whatever about the time in my life and the people and the space and you, Dail, that I was invited to revisit who I am as a human on the planet and who I am as a creative human on the planet. And what is it that I want to do with myself? And as you know, part of working on that, just exploring my creative self, like I set aside a time so Wangoi and I were there the same day every week, and I would come other times. The other day I saw the memories on Facebook popped up of the 100,000 Poets for Change.
Yes!
Yeah. And then there were, the people like Seitu and Shirley and even Michael Castro, people that would come in bits, but that core with Wangoi, and Andrea was around all the time, Chinyere was around a lot. That core of women where I felt embraced, welcomed, and challenged. Not just embraced and welcomed, but challenged. Okay, who are you? What are you going to bring into this space? And so that, it was wonderful.
And so I'm just always so thankful for you because you did a major thing for me. You worked with me in a professional way. I was the first president, and you were the second president of YeyoArts Collective.
When you asked me, I thought, oh crap, I don't want to have to fundraise. And you said it's not about that. You said you don't have to do that. Just help us with whatever your perspectives. And it was in evolution then. The professionalism was evolving. Like, how do you overlay or bring in or establish professional structures when you've got this very human and humane space where these women are contributing in different ways, these creative people, and how do you form some structures around that so that you can apply for grants, all of that kind of stuff. That was the challenge.
It's still the challenge. We made 11 years this year, and it's still the challenge. And it's a good, healthy challenge now because we're not looking at just fundraising and grant writing, but like we were talking about before we were on camera, about the content of what it is our impact is, over the numbers, and how it is we're able to build stronger relationships by kind of letting go and letting arrive at the funding options. Now, we've also racked up a long friend list and comment of people who have passed on.
Oh, yes.
And I want to shout them out because I know that both of us love them. Do you want to start it off?
Well, you brought up just before we started Milton, who I just remember as such a kind, strong, solid person. And you know what Milton did? He took one of my poems and asked for permission to exhibit it side by side with some of his artwork.
I remember.
And you know, I never made it to that exhibit. I can't remember why, but I remember feeling so honored.
I remember.
And just starting with the men, because Milton came to mind first, because we just mentioned his name, Milton and Satu.
Yes.
That passed on. And then Michael Castro, who was there at the 100,000 Poets for Change. And then Wangowi, heartbreaking. The last time I was here, Joy and I went and picked up Wangowi. We took gifts from you. And I remember we were driving in the car down around Forest Park. We were jamming to the music, snapping our fingers.
Being young again.
Yes, singing along. And Wangowi, at first, because she had had this stroke and it took most of her language, at first she was trying to show directions and she would point, she'd say, boy, boy, ah. And then she'd, no, boy, no. But then when the music was going, she started to sing the lyrics.
Hello.
And so the three of us were harmonizing.
Yeah.
Yes, and I remember the time that you took me to Shirley's house.
Yes.
And I got to listen to all the beautiful story then, and to hear about you as a young woman writer.
Oh, man. Shirley just loved us when we first got up at that open mic. What was it she said?
She said, see, she told the audience how fresh, something new, non-traditional, something new.
Yeah, she called us fresh.
Yeah.
You know, that it was, and she really liked us, and she embraced us. And the same thing,
And she encouraged us so much.
and the same thing that happened with Yeyo happened with Kale back in the day. Joy and I started volunteering. I was doing all their flyers for a while.
And I was writing press.
You were writing the press stuff, and we were there all the time, just supporting Shirley, whatever she needed for the shows.
And it was a hard time because the economy was down. People were getting laid off left and right. And you didn't know if you were going to have a job or where your next job was going to be. And it was a long, hot summer.
Who was that guy that got locked in KL overnight? Oh, he drank too much.
Yeah.
He was one of the musicians,
He
a horn
went
player.
back to the men's room or something.
Yes, we didn't
it
know.
closed while
We
was
all
in
locked
there.
up and left.
I think he must have went to sleep or something because
Yes, I don't know.
we left.
And then the next, I think it was after the weekend, Shirley said she discovered him in there. And we used to laugh and say,
He had to stay in there all weekend.
Uh-oh.
we don't know how he did it. But Jay Dubs used to be there all the time.
And Maurice.
Maurice Malik, yeah? Maurice Malik
What was
came.
that guy's name? He always wore a suit.
Oh,
The guy
which
that got
one?
locked in the back room, he always wore a suit.
That's right. I
He
don't
was
know his
well
name.
dressed,
Yeah,
but he
his
had a
name.
drinking problem.
Yes, he did.
I think he went to sleep in there, and while he was asleep, we left.
Yeah.
No one knew he was there in the back room. He went to the men's room, and that was it. So he was in there all weekend.
Yeah.
It was
Shirley
such,
was really our mentor.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Shirley was.
and it was such an honor to see you all perform together at Gaia back in the day.
Yeah.
And I could tell that the folks in the audience was proud to see that the legacy of poetry was still going strong with both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this quick interview.
Thank you.
It's about 15 minutes long. I hope y'all don't mind.
That's fine. I start yabbering. I keep going.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing. And I just can't tell you all how much I appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, and back at you.
Yes, absolutely.